is something that's learned by doing it. It's not something that's learned by an instruction manual, like learning the piano or playing tennis. You really just learn by doing it. So don't worry too much about the particular meditation technique. As a lifelong meditator, you will probably find times where you change from one system to another. That's okay, that's good. So the first and foremost quality of meditation is patience. That means be willing to train yourself day after day, year after year, decades. This is a lifelong practice. You will never get to the point where you can say, I can do meditation now. I've accomplished the learning phase. I can just enjoy bliss. It's always going to be a struggle. It's always going to be a voyage. You'll always be learning. So the important thing is just to do it. If you need a meditation object, that is a point of focus, I'd recommend that you use the breath as it runs through the center of the body. Bring attention in from the level of the eyes. Follow the feeling of the breath down into the body. The breath is a neutral meditation object. It's not attractive, it's not unattractive. Training yourself to put attention onto a neutral object is a big part of meditation. Very quickly the mind will see the breath comes in, goes out, comes in, goes out. Then the mind will say to itself, I understand the breath, and will wander off to think about something else. When the attention wanders off, this is forgetting. When you realize the attention has wandered off, that is recollection. The art of meditation is to be recollected the whole time. You know where the mind is, you know where the mind is going. You can feel thoughts, feelings as they arise, and try to grab your attention. Sights, sounds, feelings in the body, thoughts, plans, memories in the mind. These will all try to steal your attention. Then you forget yourself. Your attention is caught or bound. The moment where you remember where the mind has gone. This is the brightness of mindfulness. Mindfulness means sati, to recollect. Sampajanya, your own awareness. Remembering yourself. Try to identify when the mind is in recollection or in forgetting. Using the meditation object then is just a neutral object. If the mind settles down, stays in recollection, no need to use the meditation object. Sooner or later, to advance in meditation, you will have to drop your meditation object. It may be a mantra you are using, certain lights, colors, visualizations, breath at various points in the body. If you fall into forgetting too easily, then use the meditation object to sharpen your attention. Above all, be patient. Start from where the mind is at. Are you happy, sad, expanded, dull, concentrated, scattered? This is your starting point. Always approach with patience. It's very tricky, it takes a long time. The best meditators are not the ones with the best technique. They're ones who are willing to sit with the mind through all conditions. So we'll sit together for another 20 minutes or so. making your mind as bright and as still as you can. Turn your attention to the thought, perception and feeling of loving kindness, universal well-wishing for all world beings. Any way that you can arouse this feeling is okay. You may use the words, may all beings be happy, peaceful, free from suffering. You may use visualization, radiating this loving kindness from the center of your being. You may think of those people to whom you feel great love, affection or respect. Any way that you can find to generate the thought, feeling and perception of loving kindness. This is Sobanajita, a beautiful mind state. It's different to just mindfulness. The more often you practice a mind state, the easier it is for that mind state to arise again in the future. If we never take time and effort to develop this state, it's slow to arise, quick to vanish. So we practice it over and over, making the mind beautiful. And if it's hard to find or perceive, just the intention, generating the intention. Calling loving kindness into the mind, welcome it, nurture it, protect it. Loving kindness will make you happy. Will concentrate the mind very easily. Will give you good sleep at night. It is a protection. So call to mind loving kindness any way that you can. Share that loving kindness with the people here in this room. Open yourself up to receiving and giving. And then outwards, onwards to all world beings, unconditionally. May all beings be happy, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free from suffering. Sabbe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahantanancha te jena rakang bandami sabhaso sabba buddha nubhavena sattaso te bhavantu te Sabbe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahantanancha te jena rakang bandami sabhaso Sabba dhamma nubhavena sattaso te bhavantu te Sabbe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahantanancha te jena rakang bandami sabhaso Sabba sangha nubhavena sattaso te bhavantu te. Long do, né? ไม่ต้องเต็มต้องใช้ลองดู We have a small issue with the microphone. The battery was dead, so it's charging up. He's gone to get it. This microphone is quite heavy. You're going to hold it for an hour. Okay, so this evening I wanted to talk a little bit about how the path of meditation works, how the path of spiritual development can progress through one's life. It's important to note that each person comes from a different standpoint. Some people are very pure and very holy already, and then they come and just maybe bow to the Buddha statue and boom, they're just... And some of us aren't like that. Some of us have a lot of work to do. Kamale. I did, before I came to Thailand, I went to India. And for one reason and another, I kind of fell in with Christian groups in India. It wasn't my intention. And I was in Varanasi, and I went to stay in a Christian monastery. And there was I don't know, the abbot or the leader of it. I'd been there for a couple of days, and he turned up. He'd been away somewhere. And although I didn't really understand Christianity, this man was just the most beautiful, holy person that I'd ever met. Just made you feel so warm to be around him. Had such kindness and loving kindness, and he seemed very respectful. Was one thing that I noticed. Okay. We have to see how long the battery lasts. And I thought to myself at the time that if I spend my life meditating and practicing spiritual qualities, if I got halfway to where he is, it would be a life well spent. I should say I'm not a very good judge of character. So there's some people that I've admired that have turned out to be a bit dodgy, and then some dodgy people have turned out to be really good people. I know for myself, I think I was one of the dodgy ones, and Ajahn, well, let's not name names, some senior monks didn't hold out much hope for me lasting very long as a monk. I think they're probably right, I can't blame them, but I did, for one reason and another, outlast all of my contemporaries. It's usually the way in the monastery, people that come in the most holy and the most pious are the ones that are going to disappear very quickly. You just know it. When I ordained, I was given a room. It's quite a large room, but it's in a block. It's not the best place. And a Danish guy turned up. He was ordaining as a monk too. And he went and told the abbot, he said, I need one of the huts out in the forest, which is kind of like prized, rather than staying in the block. We have our own rooms, but it's in a block. And the reason he gave, he said, well, that's because I am ordaining for the rest of my life. And he was 56 at the time. He was 58 at the time. And I pointed out the rest of his life isn't that such a big deal. I mean, I was 28 and also planning to ordain for the rest of my life, but I didn't say anything about that. Anyway, he's gone. He long since disrobed. So outlast everybody. When people start to get involved in the spiritual path that it is something that's not of mass appeal. Like most people don't really get it. The idea of spending your life with a daily meditation practice, trying to develop something, it's not easy. The rewards are slow to come. First of all, when you get into it, of course, you can raise your spiritual level quite quickly. But then before long you hit a plateau and it's hard to really advance beyond that point. In psychology it's called the set point, which means there's a certain level of which you are at. And you can add a little bit, take a little bit away, but you're going to vary in that level. So for example, with morality, one may buy a computer it used to be Pandit, I don't know where people go now, but you buy a computer and they'll put a pirate copy of Windows on. And for most of you, probably okay with a pirate copy of Windows, but you wouldn't steal something from a shop. So you have a certain set point, and you may improve yourself a little bit. You may kind of dip into a bad period. Same with your weight. Most people have a kind of point where your weight is going to hover at. And over Christmas, you might add a little bit. Before you go on holiday, you might cut a little bit off, but you're going to level. So this idea of a set point means that when you get involved in a spiritual practice, initially you can find some gains. But then after that, if you're going to really develop, it's going to take a long, hard, difficult path. It's a lifelong path. There is no point that you get to. This kind of frustrated myself, but because when I started, I thought there's a point where you can get meditation. Like you do, somehow you can throw yourself into an alternative mind state and stay there. And then when you come out of it, you'll be kind of holy and happy. And that was the wrong interpretation. I still have never got to the point where I say, well, this is meditation, I can just go into it. And you do get to a point where you can practice with patience. So even when the mind is not cooperating, you can still sit and do it. Those times where the mind comes together, it becomes really beautiful and holy. You don't get too attached to it, because you know that will pass too. So it's not an easy thing to take up this practice. Most people don't do it. Most people never get that calling or the urge. Some people, certainly for myself, actually never heard of it. It sounds a bit silly. These days, of course, you young guys. I'm nearly 60, so I can start saying that now. The kids of today. I was watching a YouTube the other day, and this guy was reviewing an Electric Light Orchestra song, and I knew the song, so I was, I wonder, and it's a telephone line, if anybody knows the song. And at the beginning, it has this noise, and the guy reviewing it says, I know that noise, I know, there's a word for that noise. And then after about 10 minutes, he goes, it's a dial tone. It's like, really? And he didn't look that young. This guy looks like in his 40s. Like, you really don't know. Anyway, when I set out, as a youth, I didn't hear about enlightenment. I didn't hear about meditation. I had no idea what it was. Information wasn't easy to come by. I told this story before, but one day when I was young, I was driving with my father, making a delivery, and there was a guy meditating. The area where we had our shop was actually one of the key areas in Britain for early Buddhism, a place called Chorlton. And as we were making the delivery, a guy was sat in his front yard meditating. And I asked my father, what's he doing? And my father said, he's wasting his time. No idea what even meditation was. It hooked into my mind, because as a youth I'd had a lot of meditation experiences. I could spontaneously go into some of these experiences. Now I know what the experiences are, but at the time I didn't. I used to look up at the corner of a ceiling, and then I'd go into this different mode of being. And I know now why I looked at the corner, because the eyes come up. As the attention comes in, the eyes and the head will come up. And I see people entering into these jhanas, into these absorptions on meditation retreats, and the head will come up like this. And you can see them centering themselves. So I do this spontaneously as a child, but nobody could tell me what it was. So there are two key experiences that will propel one into taking up a lifelong practice. One is an experience of, it's called disillusionment or disenchantment. In the Pali it's called nibbita. In the Thai it's called kwam luan. And the other is an experience of brightness or power coming from meditation. These two experiences can happen. The first one, nibbita, is this feeling of disenchantment or disillusionment. I would like to describe it as the sense of being gripped by the sense of unreality. I don't know how many of you relate to this, but for myself as a youth, there were certain times when I was just suddenly gripped with a really powerful sense that this isn't real, that there is something seriously missing in the experience. And usually when I was having quite a nice experience, and then I would suddenly just have to withdraw and would be unable to enter into it. Anyone have that experience? I have that experience in nightclubs. Like, I always hated nightclubs. Not so much as a monk. I did go into a nightclub a few years ago in Vietnam. I was doing a talk for a group, and I just did one talk, and I was there for about 3 days. And we visited the tunnels in Vietnam and whatnot. Anyway, the organizer was this young woman. I guess she's only about 20, but very mature, and she could command attention in a room. And she said, "Would you like to come and get your award?" I'm like, I don't mind awards, especially if it's something to eat. Yeah. So I said, "Sure, I'll come and get my award." It felt like I should participate. So they sent someone to get me in the evening, and he said, "Follow me," and he just went zipping off down the street. And I was desperately following this guy because I had no idea where I was and no idea how to get back. So I was just so intent on following this guy, and hooked on the back of his T-shirt, and he was zipping here, there, and crossing the roads. And then we went in through a door, and then into another door, and then this wave of noise hit me, and the stink of alcohol, and I looked up, and I was in a nightclub. I was like, oh, shit. Because I can't leave, what can I do? Man, it was oppressive. I don't know. I mean, apparently people pay money to get into places like that. It just doesn't... and to me, even as a youth, even before I came across Buddhism, I would go into a situation like that with that noise and the smell of the alcohol and people posing and men standing with drinks like this, looking important. And I would be gripped with a sense of unreality, that this isn't it. There's something desperately missing here. It would usually happen in social situations, because when you're with nature or off by yourself, it's not so bad. So this grip of unreality in the suttas, the Buddhist suttas, we see this story not long after the Buddha had attained to enlightenment. There was a local prince or nobleman. His name was Yasa, Y-A-S-A, and he had a palace for each season, the hot season, cold season, and the rainy season. And he lived a sheltered life, and he had a troupe of female musicians to keep him entertained. Now this is something of a story trope or story motif. It doesn't necessarily mean it's literally true, but it means this motif is a symbol of luxury. So one day he was being entertained by this troupe of beautiful female musicians, and he fell asleep. And when he woke up, all these ladies had also fallen asleep. And whereas before they'd looked very beautiful and they were playing very beautifully, now they were lying on the floor with their legs up, and some of them were dribbling, some of them had got their mouths open. And suddenly this thing that was supposed to be beautiful and entertaining suddenly appeared to him as something oppressive. You may note that the Buddha had a very similar, this story also applied to the Buddha himself, but this is a different character, his name Yasa. So Yasa, being gripped by this sense of unreality, he wanders out of his palace and he goes, or the nobleman's house, and he goes wandering off down the road, shaking his head, muttering to himself, "This is distress, this is distress." Gripped by the sense of unreality. While he's walking along, after some time, he comes across the Buddha. And the Buddha says to him, "This distress that you feel is the entrance to the holy life." And so Yasa ordains, and then very quickly becomes enlightened. And he had a bunch of, I think, 50 followers. I don't know if it included the musicians or not, but and they all ordained and quickly became enlightened. So this is the story. You'll often see this scene painted on the walls in Thai temples. So it shows this sense of unreality that one can get gripped by. It goes back a long way. It's not because of mobile phones. I came here on the SkyTrain just because I usually take the underground. I took the SkyTrain, and just everybody straight on the train immediately looking into their phone. And if you're the one person who's not looking into your phone and you're looking at everyone else, doesn't that strike you as unreal? Like there's something missing, there's something wrong here. It's not a judgment. It's not an immoral thing. It's just that this can't be really what reality is. So these experiences of unreality, nipita is the technical term, or the sense of disenchantment. I really like that word because life is enchanting. Like a chant, obviously, is a spoken chant, but an enchantment means a spell that's being cast on you so that you can't see reality. And disenchantment is when you break the spell that's been blinding you. So this sense of disenchantment, if you have it, if you come across it, remember, this is the entrance to the holy life. I did have an experience similar to this myself when I went to Sri Lanka. As with my university, we had about 300 people going on this trip, and as usual, it was diabolically organized. Nobody knew. They didn't even tell me, I didn't even know where my plane was. They couldn't even tell me my plane ticket. And nobody knew about visas or anything. It's typical thing. Anyway, the rector of my university was going to go and join this, and he's a big, important guy, but he has the same name as me, right? So his name is, in Thai, Proma Bandit, or in Sri Lankan Pali would be Brahma Pandit. Well, my name is Pandit, right? So anyway, at the airport in Sri Lanka, they had this troupe of women dressed as apsaras with all the, the angelic things on their heads and the long fingernails and the ornate costumes, and gifts, big boxes of flowers and fruit juice and like lots and lots of these gifts. And they'd obviously been waiting for this monk for a couple of days because they were just all sprawled out across the floor at the airport. And when I got there, someone said, oh, any sign of Brahma Pandit? Well, I don't know. I think maybe Brahma is just what they use for monks. So I said, yeah, that's me. So all these girls suddenly, is that him? That's him, that's him, that's him. And they're jumping up, putting on makeup, straightening their thing. And they come out and start doing all these dances and giving me all these boxes and gifts and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm just a regular, I'm not the rector, you know. And they're like, oh my God. And they're taking all their gifts back off me. Anyway, so that was my experience with this. The other experience is one of brightness or power or deep stillness that can affect people. And I've spoken to a lot of people that have had these kinds of experiences. One man I spoke to, he was a very rough guy, not the kind you'd think to join a monastery, but he came. And he'd had a drug overdose and had apparently died in the hospital for a few minutes. And when he woke up, he just had this urgent urge to practice spirituality. These experiences of brightness come in the quiet moments. They don't come usually because you're doing something special. It's usually a sense of awe very often. This is what cathedrals were built to do, Western cathedrals. In the old days, it's very hard to build a high wall because they collapse and they bend. So cathedrals have these buttresses coming off them. They look very ornate, but they're there to hold the wall up. So to go into a building with a high wall and stained glass windows and that echo and the sound of an organ, it's meant to shut your mind up. It's meant to propel you into this moment of silence and awe. And this is where, if I can use Christian language, this is where God comes in. It's in that space that suddenly this awakening can occur. And normal people they're so afraid of space, so afraid of self-awareness. The second you get on the SkyTrain, phone out. Anything to not feel yourself, to know yourself. So I don't think it's a new thing, though. I think every generation has had this desperate desire for distraction. The Pali word, the Buddhist word is papancha, or distraction. And the distracted mind is, or the scattered mind, or the jumping mind, is where you feel at home. It's where you've been since you were a child. So the mind that comes together suddenly and then stops and opens up with that awe, opens up to that majesty. That's a really deep spiritual experience. And if you have had that too, this can propel you into a lifelong practice. Works for different people in different ways. There was one meditator on a retreat recently. I was helping with my university, and I have to be careful in the university to follow the exact method that they use. But I throw in a few lines just to try and catch anybody that's actually going into these deep jhana absorption experiences. So one of the nuns, Vietnamese nun, she was in a different group under a different teacher, but she came over into my group and said, that thing you mentioned where the mind goes bright and your head comes up, tell me more about that. So I started to speak to her. Now, she'd never done a meditation retreat before, but more or less spontaneously, she was on a meditation retreat, so it's not quite spontaneous, but on the retreat she'd spontaneously gone into this beautiful moment where the mind comes together, becomes very bright, becomes very powerful. And there's something in you then that recognizes this is something important. This is not like all the other things. So these experiences can come up in meditation, they can come up spontaneously, they can come up especially in your childhood. Some people may remember these things in their childhood. I was talking about auras one day. I don't know if anyone here can see auras. I was practicing trying to see auras, and you do it by looking at your hand. And I asked the group, anyone here see auras? And one woman said she used to as a child, that she couldn't recognize people's faces, but she could recognize the auras. I was a bit jealous. I've seen a bit of aura, but I can't. As soon as it starts to appear, the mind, you start to latch onto it, you try and look at it, and then it vanishes. So I was a bit jealous, but there you go. If anyone around here is going to see auras, it should be me. So a lot of these experiences come up as a child, and if you get into deep meditation as an adult, you should start remembering these experiences. In fact, one of the characteristics of going into deep meditation or into deep stillness, aside from becoming bright, aside from it becoming energized, your head comes up, attention comes in, you'll also have a deep sense of familiarity. It's something that you know has always been there. It's not like you suddenly attain to a wow, a new thing. I think that's like drugs. When I was growing up, all my friends took drugs. Everybody took drugs. And then when I started meditating, they're all, oh yeah, I get that, I get that. Because they think their drug experiences is some kind of holy meditation. Now, I've never done a drug, so I can't really say that they're wrong. I presume they're wrong. I don't know. I'm looking around the room here. Some people, some of you, I know, have probably done drugs. There was a saying that Ajahn Chah was asked, are drug experiences meditation? And he said, yes, but you've stolen it. Something like that. Go ahead. Do I classify mushrooms as drugs?
Mushroom trips that people talk about?
I've never done it. I mean, I had mushrooms today, but just the regular kind. In psychology, there has been a recent trend back to it. It fell out. First of all, it was in great favor as the solution. Then people realized it wasn't. And then it got into microdosing. So there is some movement these days. Reggie, you've seen that, of using psychedelics too. And is there good results coming from it? Yeah, but are these people that just wanted to take mushrooms? Like, oh, very good results I get from this.
They've shown in a medical context that if you give people who are dying and have no chance of recovery a big dose of it once, it changes their entire perspective on their mortality and it becomes calm. And I think that's the frontier where it'll be used first because the trials look really promising. They've done a lot of work on it in that space, but it has to be in a very particular setting.
Yeah. My perception of mortality was irrevocably changed every time I get in a Bangkok taxi. I don't know about drugs. I've never taken one, so yeah, I've no idea. I'm very skeptical, but there you go. But these spiritual experiences can spontaneously arise, and I often see it sometimes in songs. Sweet Thing by, Joe will know this, there's two versions. There's a Waterboys version and a Van Morrison version, Sweet Thing. Do you know the song? I know you know Van Morrison and the Waterboys. The song is called Sweet Thing. Van Morrison wrote it. Waterboys did a better version, in my opinion. In fact, they did two versions. And he's talking about this immense spiritual experience that comes up. I shall never, ever, ever feel so old again. And hey, it's me, I'm dynamite, and I don't know why. He's writing about this sudden experience. Another one was Supertramp Anyone know them? They did this song, Even in the Quietest Moments. I'll stick these up on Facebook if you want to hear it. But another song about a spontaneous spiritual experience that you don't know how to get hold of. And that's one of the difficulties of it, is that then, having had this experience, either of the disillusionment or of the coming together of the mind, then you've got to start doing the hard work. Then comes the lifetime of practice. So in mythology, Sir Percival of the Round Table, it's in a story called The Fisher King, which I might talk about next month. But in this story, the knight, or the young man, sees some knights and he gets inspired. I want to be a knight. And so, against his mother's wishes, he will go off in search of these knights, and he'll come across it's called a sita, or an advisor. And the advisor will tell him, don't talk too much. And then he'll go on, and then he'll enter the kingdom of the Holy Grail. This is what Star Wars was following. Obi-Wan Kenobi was the advisor. This is a very, very old story, and so many stories follow this format. Your destiny is there. You suddenly become aware of your destiny, and then an advisor will appear to show you the way, but you have to make the journey. I was watching Billy Elliot. You must have seen that movie. About the boy who wants to practice ballet. And he sees these girls ballet dancing, and he's practicing boxing, but he just wants to practice. He wants to do the ballet. Anyway, then the ballet dancer teacher appears and will give him the guidance to get him started. So this story motif is very, very common. You have the spiritual experience, the awakening, you get the urge, then comes the advice of what you have to do. Then the Percival will enter into the Grail Kingdom, but when he's there, he fails to ask the right question, and he's thrown out, and he'll have to spend a lifetime wandering around the world before he eventually finds his way back to the kingdom. The point was, the first time he has the experience comes because of innocence and ignorance. The second time, later in life, he has the experience, it's because of practice. And this is true for human nature. This is why this story is so prevalent around the world in all cultures. So, if you've had these awakening experiences, then you have to start to put the work in. The initial work that you do is to, first of all, you have to clean up your morality. You have to take some precepts. You have to straighten out. If you're living in an immoral, unwholesome way, it's going to make it very hard for you to do any kind of spiritual practice. Also, because your attention goes onto the practice, most immorality is about things that you want from other people or want from the world. Once your attention starts to turn in on yourself, what you want is your own practice. What you want is to change these qualities here. So you tend to become more morally inclined because you're less tempted out by desire. I can resist anything but temptation. So Oscar Wilde, was that? You wrote that? Or Churchill? So you have to clean up your act, you have to clean up your karma. The Buddha said you have to practice contentment with little. So just make sure you've got enough, and that's enough. Now turn your attention onto your practice. But then to develop the meditation, the initial phases is putting attention onto a meditation object. Usually the breath, or a mantra, or a visualization. And hold your attention onto that neutral object. This is a powerful, a deep, and a necessary training. But sooner or later, it should start to occur to you that you see the mind jumping. Come in, it's okay. Don't worry. You have to pay a fine if you come late. You know that, right? Putting your attention onto a meditation object. But as you start to observe the mind, you'll notice that the mind jumps from object to object to object. Every time the mind lands on an object, this is what's called in Buddhism paticca samuppada, or in Thai paticca samuppada, dependent origination. When attention lands on an object, it starts to fire that object up into consciousness. And you start to react to it, liking it, disliking it, creating stories about it, etc. And what you notice is your mind will move from object to object to object. Even as you're sitting here now, you tell yourself the story that you've sat here for 35 minutes and listened to me. You haven't. Your mind went to the door as somebody came in. Your mind went to the air conditioner, thought, maybe I'll sit somewhere else where it's not blowing. Then your mind went to the Buddha statue up here. You like it, dislike it. What kind of statue is it? What does it mean? Why is it there? Then maybe your attention comes to the fan. What's this for? Then your attention comes back to me. Then it goes onto your knee. If you pay attention, this is actual reality. This is not a spiritual teaching. It's not something you have to believe in. This is what you observe if you actually stop to look. The mind moves from thing to thing to thing to thing. When the mind lands on a thing, oomph, up comes this fireworks show of thoughts and feelings about it. So you see a Buddha image. Do you want to bow? Do you want to take a picture? Do you want to inquire what is the style of the... Or does the mind just not react and quickly move on to another thing? Notice how most of your life hovers around this quality of consciousness of objects and how you react to it. My usual one I like to bring up is Donald Trump. Because when I mention the name, either you'll think, yes, I want to make America great again, or you think, oh my God. That depends upon your past interaction, but those thoughts and feelings weren't there 5 seconds ago before I mentioned his name. It's not something that you carry around with you, that you hold on to like a box of stuff in your head. So note, attention lands on a thing, then you get this upwelling of reactions to it. A pain in your knee. I notice this like when I get the SkyTrain. I really don't like it. It's not convenient for monks, especially as you get older and more holy. We just have to be more holy as we get older. We have to walk more slowly and mindfully. And then people look at me, and then you got the thing with, you know, who can sit in the seat next to me, because women aren't supposed to sit next to me, but then they're going to sit. And then I try and get some guy to come and sit next to me, but then they're wondering what I'm doing. And it's really inconvenient. So I can fire up this, like, I don't want to do it. I shouldn't have to do it. You should send me a taxi. I'm a senior monk now. I'm 28 years as a monk. You should send me a taxi. I shouldn't have to do it. On the other hand, the taxi would probably take 2 hours, and the SkyTrain's a lot faster. It's more reliable. And so I can fire myself into a whole series of stories about it, because my attention has just landed on it. Or I can just stop and not think about it. If I don't think about it, I can sit there quite happily for, it takes about 45 minutes from where I am. Because I don't think about, if I don't put my attention onto it, it doesn't fire up. So note carefully, every moment of your life, your attention is jumping from one thing to another thing to another thing. Everywhere it goes, it lands, it reacts, gets drawn into stories. This being drawn into stories is forgetting. Breaking yourself out of that is remembering or recollection. This is the meaning of the word mindfulness, to be recollected. You can do it right now here. With your attention on me now, bring your attention back to where your eyes are. So you're including this in your field of awareness. You note there's a difference? Even just now, right now, just doing it. Instead of being focused on me, now you're including yourself into that field. That field tends to be here. This is your original face, the one you had before you were born. Keep that in mind. That is recollection. While you are recollected, the mind is not getting lost or caught in any story. That's the actual practice. This is where you go beyond or go past simply using an object of meditation. You're not just watching the breath. You're not trying to create mantras, thoughts, feelings, lights, colors, beautiful mind states. You're withdrawing from that entire process of perceiving objects. You're moving into what's called unconditioned. In Buddhism, it's called unconditioned. A conditioned thing means it depends on their attention. When I put my attention on the fan, that's now conditioned by the fan, my thoughts, my feelings, my stories. The unconditioned is that background continual awareness that's just there, that you overlook. That's what you have to catch hold of. You're going past the need for meditation objects at this point. This is unconditioned, or it will start to appear. You say to yourself, well, now my mind's in greed or lust or hatred or whatever it is. Now my mind's in recollection. Now my mind's not in recollection. So it appears as if this unconditioned, or this state of knowing yourself, appears and disappears, arises and ceases. It doesn't. It's actually always already there. So it's a bit like if you look at the sky and you see, one minute you're seeing clouds, then you see blue sky, then you see clouds, then you see blue sky. You think, well, the clouds arise and cease. The blue sky is also arising and ceasing. But when you look carefully, the sky is not always arising and ceasing. It's actually always there. In the same way, bring your attention back to this recollection, like, oh, right now I'm remembering myself. It doesn't feel magical. It feels familiar. It's very hard to get hold of. But if you settle into that mode of not perceiving objects, this is where your practice really starts to deepen. You're stepping out of Maya, out of delusion, and you're stepping into this new way of being. This is what I was doing as a child when I was staring into the corners of buildings. I'd look up, bring my attention back, and I'd enter into this mode that my parents couldn't explain to me. Hooks into your experience a little bit. Once the hooks are in there, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to always keep coming back to this practice. Because there's an awakening that suddenly you know there's something more there. The Buddha described it this way. He said, and how he knew this, I can't imagine, because he lived inland. He said, when the ships go out to sea, they take a box of birds with them. When they lose sight of land, they let the bird out, and the bird will fly up. If it can't see land, it will land back on the ship. If the bird goes up and it sees land, it will go and fly to the land. He said, in the same way, you come to me, you ask me for teachings. But then you disagree with me or you argue and you wander off. But you will keep coming back until the day you find solid ground. The word solid ground was one of the many Pali words for enlightenment. So yeah, once that thing is hooked into you, there's nothing you can do. You can get distracted for sometimes years, but you're going to keep coming back to this little niggling thing because you failed at normal. That was the title of the talk. You failed at normal. Just, live, make love, buy stuff, die. That isn't the whole story. That's not you get this unreality with that. So, this is when I went to India. I went to Arunachala, the mountain of Ramana Maharshi. And they say if you walk around the mountain, you're guaranteed enlightenment. So of course everybody goes and walks around. It takes about 6 hours. It's a long time. Apparently now they have all these pathways and ice cream shops and things. And when I did it, it was holy, and we just thorny bushes. And I just wondered why you have to walk around the base of the mountain. Why can't you walk around the top of the mountain? It's just like takes you 10 minutes. But that's the same idea, is once you've done something for the sake of enlightenment, once that has lodged into your mind, somehow or other you're going to keep coming back to it. One way or another, you're going to have to do the practice. Yeah. It's actually why I became a monk, because I knew I was too easily distracted by things. So I wanted to ordain to corner myself so I can't get away from it. Because I know this thing, but it's hard work. Yeah. Taken a long time. I ordained in 96. Yeah. So end of this year will be 30 years. Wow. I feel like I'm getting started now. It's actually true. I practiced the wrong way for 20 odd years, and it's only some 5-6 years ago that it finally came together, and I knew what I was doing. So I'm going to leave it there for today. Anybody have any questions, comments, or do you have any, or your own experiences? Go ahead. I can repeat what he says. Okay.
What was the reward?
So the rewards of meditation should come right away.
The reward in the bar, you said.
Oh, the award. Oh God, I can't remember, some beads or something stupid. But the thing that really got me was this girl who had been organizing it, very young, and this was a conference for really high-powered business people. But she did a fantastic job of it. But she was very beautiful. And on that night, she had on this kind of short black dress, very elegant. But she came over to where I was sitting. She put a hand on my back and said, "Oh, we're so glad that you came here." I'm like, "Oh my God." I mean, I was already discombobulated by being in this horrible nightclub. And then she comes over and there's this, Christ, I hope no one's filming this. So that was my award. It was not very pleasant at all. She didn't know. I mean, I can't blame her. So, yeah, go ahead.
When you were talking about disillusionment or disenchantment, I was thinking about how those words in English also can mean, like if you feel disillusion, for example, that's a kind of negative feeling because
Right.
perhaps reality or something has,
Right.
maybe something hasn't worked out, whatever it is. And I guess my question is, can experiences in life send you into these states? Because what you seem to be implying that like when you were a child is that, it would happen to you. But can life experiences, I don't know, a big crisis or something, push you into that?
Yeah. So the thing with a crisis is it breaks you out of Maya, out of the dream world. A crisis or any kind of suffering has the quality that it starts to force you back into the present moment. Because it's hard to get lost in thoughts and grudges and plans and stuff when something is very immediate, harassing you, pain, physical or mental. So it can be the impetus for it. The point of the story with Yasa was he felt he was walking along. He had 2 lines. This is distress. This is distress. And then the Buddha said, this is not distress. This is the entrance to the holy life. So I've kept that with me. You know, these stories are there for that reason. They're not there because they're literally true. They're there because they're motifs that you can remember. So yes, if you get to that disenchantment, it feels uncomfortable and it's not nice. But remember, oh, this is actually the start of something beautiful. Yeah.
What were you doing wrong for 25 years?
What I was doing wrong for more than that, I had been told with meditation that you allow thoughts to be there. You don't attach to them and you don't repress them. That is the incorrect teaching. It's absolutely wrong, and I can't emphasize how wrong it was. So what I would do was, basically I would practice patience, and I'd sit there and I'd be thinking, build a retreat center, I'll go to America, and I'd allow thoughts to be there. And by doing that, I'm just getting lost in a dream world. But because I'm not attaching, I told all my teachers would say, because you don't attach to the thoughts, you can just let them be there. It's not right. You have to step out of that entire process of perceiving objects in order to go into these beautiful awakening experiences. It's like if you're on a bus and I say there's a nice park, you can't get to the park unless you step off the bus. Unless you step out of that ordinary mind that is lost in thoughts and dreams and stories, you can't experience this other new thing. So don't allow thoughts to be there. Now, if you're fighting your mind, that's another thing. If you're like, no, don't thought, no, no, no. If you're clenching up your arms, squeezing your eyes, that's just another action that you're making. You're still trying to generate perceptions. But that moment where it all stops, you come back. Usually you come back here, and it's lucid, and it's present. Like, okay, that's the right thing. Don't let it go for a second. You have to give all of your attention to that one thing. Then will start to happen. Yeah. By the way, I saw this, if some of you know Rupert Spira, he's an enlightened guy, you see him on YouTube. And he was saying this too. He's saying you just allow thoughts to be there but he's saying that from an enlightenment perspective. He can be there in this beauty and majesty and the bathing in the unconditioned, and a little thought comes in and a little thought, boom, and it's gone. But that's not most people's experience. I would make an analogy like this. If somebody says, if you get wet, you don't need to dry yourself. Well, if a little drop of water falls on your hand, you can just leave it there and ignore it. It's not going to harm you, and it will evaporate. If you're in the ocean and you're drowning, you need to make an action. So, again, some of these enlightened people will say things like that, just let thoughts be there. Sure, you can, for you, but I'm drowning over here. I have to employ mechanisms. I have to make a practice. Otherwise, you can't get out of it. So, yeah, that was what I was doing wrong. I thought I could just allow, and I would practice patience. And then sometimes the mind would just go, and kind of get expansive, and kind of pleasant, but you're not really aware, and then the bell would go or something, and I went, oh, yeah, maybe that's, infinite space. Yeah. No, I was dreaming, I was lost, I wasn't conscious. The enlightenment experiences, as they start to come up, are powerful, vivid, in your face, with an effervescent energy that scares the crap out of you. Takes a while, and then you have to learn to sit there with this energy pumping through your body. Or sit there in lost, because you know that you had it once and now you can't find it. A lifelong practice.
I have a question about immorality. Is it something objective or something that could be moral for one person but spiritual for another?
Yeah. this question came up in the Buddha's time, and the question was framed this way. If you were to walk along one bank of the Ganges with a giant wheel and razor blades all around the wheel, slicing people up, cutting them and leaving them in a huge mound of steaming dead flesh, and then if you were to walk back down the other bank of the Ganges, giving away money, flowers, candles and incense to people, is there a difference in these two actions? So that was how the question was framed in the suttas. And the Buddha made clear, he said, yes, there absolutely is a difference. There is a actual scale of goodness and not goodness that's built into the universe, independent of what you think you are doing. So that was his answer to that question. There is an actual right and wrong. So there are a lot of questions about this. I very much like Robert Persig's. He was the one who wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And he wrote a follow-up book 25 years later called Lila. And in Lila he says, instead of viewing the world as subjective and objective, or seeing the world as right and wrong, he said you should view the world as static and dynamic. And everything that you can see has an interplay between static and dynamic. So static, in this case, would be there are certain rules that you have to follow. Don't kill, don't steal. Dynamic means, well, there are times when the right thing to do is break the rule. So there's always an interplay between static and dynamic. Even in natural systems, it's a long thing. I actually have a talk about this on YouTube somewhere. But yeah, it's an interesting way. So morality falls into that. You can have a static list of moral rights and wrongs, but then there's also the dynamic application. Sometimes it's right to apply something and sometimes it isn't. And he gives an example of Jesus overthrowing the money lenders' tables. I'm not big on Christian stories, but they're a bit vague in my mind. But if somebody's there, basically a bank, right? These money lenders were the banks, and to turn over their tables would be an immoral act. But in this case, it wasn't. I don't know. So he just says, view static rules are one thing, but the dynamic application of rules is another. Evolution, nature, things all work in this same way too. Even your body works in this way. Anyway. Last quick question.
Is it related as egoness, and do you believe it is like
Egoless.
egoness?
Egoless.
No, egoness or egoless. Yeah. I mean, ego.
Without ego.
Yeah.
There are 4 different definitions of what ego can be. One is a sense of self-aggrandizement, big ego. That's actually not the technical definition. There is a sense of agency of an ego. There's the psychological definition. Ego is the wisdom principle, something that you're supposed to develop. You're supposed to have a good, strong ego. You can't possibly be without an ego, otherwise you're an animal or a worm. And another definition, I have a paper on this somewhere. So, depends which definition you have. As a sense of self-aggrandizement, you can be without that kind of ego. As a sense of agency, you can't be without an ego, otherwise you just be a blob. So no, you have to develop the ego in that sense. Ego is a tricky one because the idea of an ego is very much a modern psychological term. You won't find any parallel in any suttas, even though a lot of translators try to put it in. So Buddhism has this idea of non-self. It's got nothing to do with ego. Ego is basically Freud invented the term, near enough, invented the term. non-self in Buddhism means when your attention lands on an object, that object has just arisen in consciousness. That object is not yourself, you can't control it, it's going to vanish. But you don't say, I arise and I vanish. You say that object has arisen and vanished. So that's non-self. In Buddhism, specifically applies to an object of perception. Doesn't mean there is no self. And in fact, I frequently say one of the mistakes in meditation is they try to say you shouldn't have any self. And sometimes you lose the sense of self if you meditate. Now, hang on to that sense of self, that sense of presence. That will be the thing that energizes. Not self as in my age, my thoughts, my politics, my views, my opinions. That has to go. But that's gone when you're not thinking about it. If you're just there in the present moment, that's all disappeared. But the sense of self as in the sense of presence, that you have to cultivate. In Thai, it's quite clear. They say, "Ru tua, mai ru tua." Know yourself and not know yourself. You have to hang on to ru tua, know yourself. And they don't get confused with ru tua and anatta and non-self. For some reason, Westerners get confused. The disillusionment of the self is not a good thing. It means you're basically kind of falling asleep. Your mind is shutting down. Yeah, so hang on to that sense of presence, sense of self. Will start to energize and become powerful. Okay, I'll still be here if anybody wants to chat a bit longer. I'm going to be here, so you're welcome to, but we're going to finish the session.
Pandit, thank you very much. Your talks have so many ideas, it's hard to fixate on any one of them. I think I'm going to get off the bus is my idea for today. But yeah, thank you, and thank you for coming. We are going to have a talk every Monday. Prof. Pandit is going to be talking every first and second Monday of the month. Next week we're going to have Dharma Circle, and then there will be another monk talking at the end of the month. Meshi. Oh, the first time we're going to have a Meshi. Okay, that's fantastic. We're moving in brand new directions, okay? Okay, now the requests. Can you help us move the brown chairs into that room? Someone will help you move them past the Buddha. Move the white chairs into the other room.